on.
Yes. Good afternoon.
Hi.
This is Misty Luminais, and I'm here with Hank Smith. It is August 26, 2014, and we are doing a researcher interview for the Voicing in Action project. Do you mind saying your full name for me?
My name is Henry C. Smith.
Okay, thanks. Audio sounds good. Video looks like it's working.
But you can call me Hank.
Hank, okay. So in order to measure the impact of the Voicing in Action project, we will film interviews based on the following questions. First, can you tell me about your experience with the Voicing in Action project?
The experience was very enlightening, finding out so much about the East Cleveland residents and how they feel about our city. I thought it was very enlightening to me. And the people that I worked with in the project was very helpful. They worked very well as a team. And I think that was very important for this project to work, that whenever you needed some help or some advice from somebody, you always had somebody you could call, so, and usually someone has experienced whatever it is you're going through. So I just thought it was a great experience. Looking forward to being even more a part of this project.
So how do you feel like the team came together? Like how was that process?
At the beginning, I remember going to some meetings in East Cleveland, and I would see different people that I've seen in other meetings, and I guess that's when the word started getting out about what the project was about, and the same people that I was seeing that was involved in different activities around the city, they seemed to be the same people that had signed up for this program, mostly as interviewers. And I was just glad that it was people that I were familiar with, to work with. Yeah.
And you felt like the advice you were getting from other interviewers?
Yeah, because I think we all were novices at when we first started. We started off. Some of the participants had certain experience, but most of us we hadn't done this before. So we relied on the instructions that we got. Well, myself personally, I relied on the instructions that I got from the staff of the Social Justice Institute. That'll be Dr. Rhonda, yourself, Shelley White, and I can't remember the other lady's name. Allison, yes. And I miss her. Where'd she go?
She's working on Power Up right now. So
Oh, okay.
she's still with us.
Okay, good.
In a different capacity.
Sorry, I forgot her name.
That's fine.
But yeah, it started off with a lot of people that did not know much about interviewing, but as we went along and we helped each other in different ways, I mean, we learned so much about filming, using the camera properly, different interview techniques, which we would run across each other at the different monthly meetings that we would have. We would share thoughts about problems that we had, or things that worked out very well, so we communicated a lot, and that's very important. Yeah.
And how important were the monthly meetings for you?
The monthly meetings was extremely important to me because there was always some kind of experience that I would have at an interview that I was hoping to share with the other interviewers and try to get some feedback about what they experienced. So that was very important that we had those monthly meetings. And it helped with the camaraderie too, you know.
So how has your perception of the community changed due to your involvement with the project?
How has the community changed since I've been a part of the project?
How has your perception of the community changed? Like, what did you think of the community before you started doing the interviews, and how has that changed? Like, now, what do you think about the community?
Okay, what I felt about the community when I first started doing the interviews was this community is in a lot of trouble. We need help, and the Voicing in Action project gave me some tools to maybe help understand why we have so much problems in our city. It gave me a outlook of how other people felt, and it made me look inside to see more about how I felt about my community. And as it progressed, I feel like the attitude hasn't changed much. You know, we still are in need of a lot of help in our city, but by going through this process with the Voicing in Action project, I think it's a way to give the people in the city a voice to speak out. And I think that's important if we're going to make any changes. I mean, I've seen some changes politically that I was glad about, but we still need a lot of help, you know. And I do feel like after talking to everybody and finding more about how other people feel about our city, I just think we're at a point in time where we as citizens need to step up and help ourselves. I mean, it's not just East Cleveland that's having these issues. You know, there's other cities all around us here and all across the United States that's having the same issues, and some of them even worse than East Cleveland. But I think what John Kennedy said a long time ago about when he had that inaugural speech about ask not what you can do for your country, ask what I got it backwards. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, something like that. But I think about that a lot now, reflecting on East Cleveland. You know, we're at a point right now where you can't depend on the city government just to do simple things that you need done that ordinarily the city would do. But right now, the city of East Cleveland is so financially strapped, just like many other communities around here. It's time for the residents to step up and think about what John Kennedy said back in 1963, I think it was. You know, and we need to stop thinking about what the city can do for us and figure out what we can do to help our city move forward. And I got that attitude mostly from this project.
So is it fair to say that your ideas about who the agents of change are different now than when you started the project?
I would say that earlier I was dependent on the city government and city agencies to get things done. But now I just talking to people and being involved with the different people that's involved with this program, I'm beginning to see that, you know, sometimes the city just can't help you. You just have to step up. I mean, that's why I personally try to get out and I cut grass on vacant and abandoned lots and things like that. The city just don't have the finances to do it. you know, and I understand that. I'm working at a job right now where the city don't have enough money to supply the needs to make the job work, function properly. But I've been going out spending my own money, which I'm about to stop doing, you know, to buy essential things, because I just want to see, us survive, get over this hump, whatever it is, and I want to help in whatever way I can.
So you mentioned a couple, but could you expound on what skills you've learned?
What skills I've learned? I've learned a lot about operating a camera, for one thing. You know, sometimes cameras can be tricky, and you know, especially nice cameras like we were supplied. If you don't understand the lighting and the sound and all of that, you can not come out with a good film. But I've learned to adjust the camera, adjust the lighting, have the correct sound, so I benefited a lot from that. I can take much better pictures at home or when I film some things. Also, talking to people about their personal thoughts and about their history in a city. I have learned to communicate better with a lot of times strangers, you know. So it has helped build my communicating skills.
So how do you prepare for an interview?
When I prepare for an interview, do you mean prior to, well, I want to make sure I answer this correctly.
Imagine this is going to be helpful for both us as part of the project and for future researchers. So all of your preparation steps would be useful.
Okay. Well, when I prepare for an interview, one thing that is important to me is the setting. The setting and the lighting. It's important to make sure that you have the correct lighting and that the lighting is behind the interviewer. You have more light behind the interviewer instead of the interviewee. Once you get light behind the interviewee, it causes a glare in the camera. You might not notice it until you replay it. Then you'll find out that light has cast a glare shadow over you. So I do like to go to the place where I'm going to be filming and set it up so that I can see where the interviewee is going to sit. I would like to make sure that there's not a lot of outside noises, things like that you have to look for. And you learn, mostly I learned it through trial and error after filming some interviews and then looking back on it and notice that there's a glare coming from this mirror that's shining through that window. All of that's important. So whenever you learn about how to prevent that from happening, you really need to pay attention, you know, or you're going to mess up some film. You know, yeah, that's one of the things I do to prepare. I also try to talk to the interviewee to kind of make them feel comfortable and let them know that they have a say in this. If it's something that they feel like they don't want recorded, you know, they can let us know, you know. And a lot of times people might be reluctant to say certain things, but I found out as they get into the interview, a lot of times they loosen up. But I think it's very important to talk to your interviewee and let them know that they are in control of this filming.
what about the informed consent process?
The informed consent, I generally would get the informed consent to the participant at least 2 weeks at the most, but at least a week before the interview. And that gives that person time to sit down and peruse it and really understand so that they can contact you if they have any concerns. But if you take that consent form the very day that you're going to do the interview and try to get them to sign it, I don't think that gives them time to really make a sound decision on whether they really want to do this or not. You know, so that I think a time period is necessary. I think our time period was a week, and then I think did it go down to 3 days? Yeah, it went from a week to 3 days, but I thought that week was good. You know.
And do you do any kind of research on the person that you're interviewing?
I try to find out how long the person has been involved with East Cleveland. You know, some of my interviews were with people who didn't exactly live in East Cleveland, but they had a history with our city. You know, so it's important that this project was strictly about East Cleveland. So it's important to do some research on the person and make sure that this person has lived or worked or involved in our city for a period of time where they can have some kind of good input for the project.
So we talked a little bit about this, but can you explain more about how the setting of the interview impacts the work?
The setting?
Mm-hmm.
You mean like the color of it or the background?
Kind of like that, but also like where you were doing your interviews, like the different locations you were interviewing and how you felt that.
The different locations I would do an interview, I tried to do an interview in a place that was close to where the participant would feel comfortable. So I tried to get them to do it at their home or someplace where it was comfortable for them. But in the process, I would find out that a lot of times you go to a person's home and you don't have enough light, you know, because people are different, and you might go into a home and the windows are, it's too many windows for one thing, or the lighting is so low that you have problems there. So it's important to take a look at where you're going to set up at. I had spoke on it before that you should go the day before at least and make sure that everything is set up so that it will be conducive to your interview, you know, as far as the lighting, the background, and all of that. You want to add, sometimes it can be a blank wall. You might want to add some flowers or some plants, put something in there to make it a little more interesting. But I did notice eventually that you don't want a lot of background activity going. You know, sometimes I would do interviews in my house because I couldn't do it where the interviewee wanted to do it at. So I would take it to my house, and then when I would look back on the replay of the interview, I would see all these things in the background, and it made me realize this is not good because it takes your attention away from the interviewee. So it's very important that you keep that background mellow. You don't want it too much action in the background. If it's kind of bland and you add a plant or something like that, that's sufficient, you know, because it's so easy to take the attention away from the participant.
And how about like how the setting impacted the mood of the interview?
Yeah. Well, when you're in a place where the interviewee is familiar with, it's much better, believe me. It makes them more at ease. And I think it affects their mood more so than the interviewer. You know, when they're in a comfortable environment, they feel a little more relaxed, and as you ask these sensitive questions, you know, they tend to be a little more open. But if you get a person in the wrong environment, you know, you have to be careful about your environment because they might not be as open if they're not comfortable. And so it's very important to make sure your interviewee is comfortable in the setting.
So I wanted to ask you specifically about, you interviewed Mr. Ephraim Abdullah,
Yes.
both at in a public place and at his home. Can you talk a little bit about how the difference between those two interviews was?
Well, when I interviewed him in the public place, that's where I first found out how much light will hurt your film. Because in the public place, it was right next to a window, a wide window that the light shined in. I got glares that I didn't like. And also, there was noise disturbances, you know, because it was a public place, so people were walking past, and sometimes they would see us interview and tap on the window, you know, but that's the nature of people. But it made me want to do the interview over again, and I did it in my home, and that's where I found out I did it in a spot where it was too much action on the back of the wall. So this was 2 interviews with the same person, but both of them I was not happy with. One was because of the lighting and the noise distractions in the public environment, and then when I got privately in my home, I realized the position that I set him up in, there was too much action on the wall, and it took away from the interview. Yeah.
Do you feel like you responded differently to the questions?
I don't think he responded differently to the questions, no. It's just that at the first interview, I cut the questions because the disturbances that I was getting, and the fact that we were in a public place. Yeah, now that I think about it, when I think back on that, it could have affected the way he responded, because when we were in the public place, I think he was trying to, and there were some of his friends that was coming around and watching watching us interview, and I think he was playing more to his friends than really opening up to the questions that I was asking. He was, you know, but when I did the interview in my home and it was just me and him there, I do believe he was more honest and open with his answers. That's just my feeling.
So what has been the most surprising or challenging aspect of the work?
The most challenging would be setting up the interview. It's hard to coordinate everybody, because sometimes you would want a cameraman, a camera person, the interviewer, and the interviewee. So you have 3 people, you have to coordinate their schedules. A lot of times that was so difficult that it did not happen. And I would end up doing the interview and the filming at the same time. You know, I think it's better when you do have a videographer and an interviewer. You know, I think that's much better, because that way the interviewer doesn't have to focus on that camera. He can just focus on the interviewee, and the camera person can focus on the filming, you know. But when you're trying to do both of them, you know, sometimes it can cause problems, I think, you know, because you're looking at the camera, you're not really focused on what you're doing, because you want the right picture. And sometimes that can kind of throw you off. Yeah. So I do believe in the future, whenever you can have a videographer and an interviewer, you'll come out with a better project. Yeah.
Was there anything that surprised you about the project?
Well, what surprised me was the lack of participation I've been able to get from the younger people in the community. I mean, it seemed like the older generation was always happy to talk about how they felt about their community, and they were willing to answer these questions and talk about these significant race issues and things like that. And but whenever I try to get the younger interviews, I had one really good one. That was with Dante. What's Dante's last name? Gibbs. He was a great interviewee. I wish I had more people around his age, because he gave some great insights that I wasn't getting from the older generation. You know, so I really needed that younger voice. But the surprising part was whenever I would approach a lot of younger generation, they were not too enthusiastic about the project for some reason, and I can't quite understand why, but I have had a hard time getting young interviews. And I also think it's important that you find the different parts of the different aspects of the different generations. I think it all needs to be in there. You know, I have gotten a lot of them, like I said, from the older generation, but I think it needs to be broken down because of the questions that's asked. It needs to be broken down as far as the racial disparities and things like that. Like, I didn't get a lot of older white interviews that I thought would be more significant in the East Cleveland part. Most of the interviews I got was older African Americans, and but before all the African Americans moved to East Cleveland, it was a predominantly white environment. And I think that was really significant to this project, and I have been unable to get any so far. Yeah, so I still think that we need that part to be part of this project. Not only older white people that lived in the community, we also need the younger black people that lives in the community. So we're missing really strong aspects of this project until we get those.
So, how did what you actually do differ than what you thought you would be doing?
Let me make sure I understand. How do I say that again?
How do what you actually do, how is that different from what you thought you would be doing when you signed up for the project?
No, this is about what I thought it would be. You know, when I signed up for the project, it turned out exactly what I thought it would be. You know, they explained it pretty good from the beginning.
So, would you encourage others to participate? And if so, what advice do you have for future community researchers?
Yes, I would definitely encourage other people to participate. They will find themselves enlightened with a lot of things that they might not have known about their own city. I know I did. I found out a lot of things about the people that live there, how long African Americans have been living in East Cleveland, because there was a time when I didn't even think African Americans lived over in this part of the city when I was growing up, you know. But now I'm finding out there were people that's been living in this city 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I mean, no, I've been there 30 years ago, but I'm talking about 50 years ago, 60 years ago. It just surprised me that so many African Americans was living in East Cleveland at that time. You know, so that was a little surprising. I don't know if I answered that question right.
No, that's okay. What advice would you give future researchers?
I would, future researchers, I would say, just work as a team. You know, the teamwork is going to be important. Any questions you might have, seek out the staff because they can help you in whatever problems you might have. The staff is well equipped to help you with it. You know, now I'm gonna think of more things when I leave here that I should have said. But
So, are there any specific recommendations you would make about interviewing techniques? Has there been anything that you found particularly useful?
I just followed what I was taught at the beginning. You know, just keep in mind what they teach you at the beginning about the cameras and how they work and the different techniques you're going to pick up as far as you go along. You'll find out what fits for you. You know, people are different, and how other people respond to you, you find out as you're talking that, you know, some people respond differently to the same questions. You know, so it's something you just have to feel your way through. Yeah.
So in the meetings, we've talked a lot about the art of the follow-up. Has that been helpful for you as you do interviews?
The art of the follow-up is talking about as far as going back and talking to them again after the interview.
No, just like we have a list of 10 questions, but those aren't the only questions that you ask.
Oh, yeah.
It's a conversational interview.
Well, a lot of times, you know, you can ask one of those questions and they'll start talking about it. Sometimes they tend to get away from the question. You know, you might ask them a specific question about racial disparities in your community or something like that, and they'll start on that, and then next thing you know, they're talking about something completely different. So you have to try to guide them back to answer the question that you ask, because a lot of times you'll find them drifting off into another conversation. But don't stop that conversation. Let it go, you know, because you'll find out as the interviewee is talking, a lot of times they already answer some of the questions that you're about to ask them. So I guess the advice that I would give is don't talk too much. Let the interviewee do the talking. You just kind of prompt them a little bit, and believe me, they will start talking. And don't stop them, just let them talk. And you will find sometimes that certain people, it's hard to get them to answer the question that you ask. Sometimes they give you a yes or no answer and that's it, you know, and then they stop, and then you have to prompt them some kind of way to bring them back and get them talking again, you know. And sometimes that can be a difficult trick when you find somebody that's, you know, don't express themselves very well, you know. But sometimes if you just say certain things, you might be able to get them to start opening up. And once you hit that one thing that they find interesting, get them to talk about it, and, you know, and they'll grow with it. You know, find something that they can relate to, something interesting to them, and you'll find that they'll start talking. But I had a couple interviews that it was hard to Sometimes it's just impossible to get them to talk. You know, at that point, it's not much you can do. But you know, unless you can find something that's going to interest them, and once you find that interest, just bounce off of that. You know.
That's good advice.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any particular question that you found people were hesitant to answer?
Most things, when it came to race, for some reason, a lot of the people I interviewed, they didn't want to talk about race issues. Sometimes I don't feel like they were honest about their feelings when it came to race. You know, I think it's a very sensitive part. You know, some people just don't like to talk about. When you bring race up, they kind of shut down. You know, I think it's important that we be able to discuss issues without fear of, you know, somebody getting angry because of something you said. You should be, in these interviews, you should be able to express exactly how you feel. And sometimes it's not easy to get people to do that. Yeah.
Do you feel like you're more comfortable talking about race now?
Yes, I do. I feel like I am. You know, even myself, I found myself having a difficult time talking about it when I personally got interviewed. You know, but then it made me see some things about why some of my interviews wasn't as successful, or I thought they weren't as successful, because there was people feeling the same way that I was feeling, and it did change my perception of how to talk to people as far as the interview was concerned.
So would you recommend that researchers get interviewed early in the process so they can understand that?
I think that would be a good idea. That would be an excellent idea, because I think if I had gotten interviewed early in the project, I would know how I felt, and when I ran into those situations with my interviewees, I could relate to it. You know, but when you do it the other way around, you know, then you realize you've done all of these interviews and they could have been better. You know. So I think it would be a good idea for interviewers to get off early. You know, and plus it'll give them more experience, you know, on what to look for. You know, I believe that's a good idea. Yeah.
So, it's a big question. How do you define social justice?
Social justice, so that everybody in society is treated the same as far as justice is concerned. Everybody's the same, you know. It's no one person because you got more money, or because you're a different color, or, you know, or because you're from this community, or because of who you know, you get these special privileges. Nobody get those special privileges when it comes to justice. Everybody's the same, you know.
So when you say justice, what do you mean?
Being treated fairly. You know, when I look at the incident in St. Louis right now, Michael Brown, the young man that was shot unarmed, they're calling for justice. Now, I've got my own opinion about what happened, but it seemed like they're calling for this police officer to be prosecuted just like any other citizen, you know, or vindicated, you know, depends on what really happened. We don't know. But what they're calling for, what everybody is up in arms about, they want to make sure that justice is done. Did this man really just get executed? You know, that's what people are thinking. You know, personally, I don't know what happened. I need some facts. You know, and so far at this point, I don't have the facts. So as far as justice, you know, justice is just being treated fairly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, am I hearing you right that you're talking about like criminal justice? Are there other aspects to justice beyond criminal justice?
But it all boils down to being fair, being treated fairly. And it doesn't just have to be criminal. You know, it's just being fair in society. You know, that just because you're a police officer don't mean you're above the law. You know, just because you live in East Cleveland, you deserve to be treated just like somebody that lives in Pepper Pike. You know, so no, justice comes in many forms. Criminal is just one of them. Yeah, criminal is just one of them. Comes in many forms. You know, societal justice is just being treated fairly. You know, in all aspects. I mean, we're all human. You know, some of us more human than others. You know. Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess I'm trying to get at, like, the closing of Huron Road Hospital was a big deal for people in East Cleveland.
That's social justice, yeah.
So, I was thinking about things like access to health care, kind of labor policies. Like, would you include that in your definition of social justice?
Yes, yeah, most definitely. The closing of Huron Road Hospital. You have to look at the big picture as far as that's concerned. You know, a lot of people claim that it wasn't not justified to move that hospital because that had the only, what they call it, a trauma center in this area, whereas East Cleveland has more trauma than anywhere in the state, you know, and they shut down the hospital, the only trauma center in the most predominantly traumatized area in our state. Some people would say there's no social justice in shutting that down. Other people would look at it and say it's fiscally responsible thing for Cleveland Clinic to shut it down and move out. And but when you're a corporate citizen like Cleveland Clinic, as large as you are, before you shut down a trauma area like that, you need to make arrangements to see that people can still be taken care of, because you're the biggest healthcare facility, one of the best in the world, you know, and just to shut it down in a city with so much trauma and activity, you know, a lot of people feel like that's an affront to social justice, you know. But you got to look at everybody's picture too, you know. How is it going to affect Cleveland Clinic's bottom line in this area? Things like that, you know. Some people feel like that doesn't matter, but personally, I think you have to consider everything.
You know, I want to argue with you about that.
I know. I mean, I have certain feelings about things that is a lot different than what some other people feel. So sometimes, you know, I hold back on things that I want to say. Yeah, because they won't be popular, and I know that. But some people know me, and you know, and I do try to speak my mind and how I feel, you know, even though it does upset some people, you know. But that's the way it works, you know. That's the way it works.
So, how have your ideas about social justice changed from when you started the project?
It hasn't changed much. Yeah, it has not changed much. My feeling of social justice has been with me for a long time. You know, it's been with me many years, and I haven't seen much that would change the way I feel, because I still see the same things. You know.
So I think this is not part of our questions, but I'm interested in your idea of social justice. Like, we can talk about like kind of people's personal experiences and like on an individual level how things are unjust.
Mm-hmm.
But how about things like structural injustice? Like, I mean, nobody's particularly singling out East Cleveland that we know of that's saying it's an African American community. We shouldn't send them funds. Like, there are all these other structures that are in place that aren't on the surface racist, but taken together actually serve racist purposes.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's not about like the individual being treated fairly. That's a different kind of problem. Like, how do you understand that?
You mean like the fact that there's no good grocery stores in the city of East Cleveland? Got one bank. We no longer have a hospital. These things, a lot of times, I don't feel. A lot of times, I don't feel like there's social injustice myself. You know, I feel like there's nobody's saying, well, we're going to treat East Cleveland unfairly. It's just that there's things happening right now. East Cleveland is in a position where our elected officials have not done well for us for many, many years. Other cities and other areas that could probably help us in different ways are reluctant to do that because of what they have seen with our city leadership. You know, the city leadership hurts a lot of the residents that live in our city. You know, it's really been bad. For some reason, we've been unlucky with who we put in office. You know, right now we have Mayor Gary Norton, and I think he's an asset. He's the best asset I've seen to the city since we've had a mayor. You know, our city council has been terrible ever since we've had a city council. Now I finally feel like something good is happening. They seem to be trying to work a little bit together, the council and the administration, and this is a first in our city. But we are not the only ones that see that. You know, other communities see it, and other businesses see it. So when different things like banks or hospitals or grocery stores or the different things that we need want to come into our city, they think about our city leadership and how bad it's been. So that's not social injustice. That's just a city that's just not making good decisions.
But wouldn't you say that a child that had no say in being born in East Cleveland, not getting the kind of health care that she or he needs, or not going to a school that's up to standards that would get her or him into college, like give them an avenue to make a productive life without the kind of struggles that currently affect people in East Cleveland? Isn't that injustice?
I feel like anybody in East Cleveland has opportunity to exceed or excel if that's what they want. You know, people just need to, if they get a passion, they need to take that passion and do the best they can with it. I cannot blame my downfalls on social injustice. I just can't, you know, because I have just as many opportunities as anybody else. I don't care who they are, where they come from, what color they are. This is America, and I have just as much opportunity to do anything I want, just like anybody else. Sometimes you might have to leave East Cleveland or the environment that you're comfortable in. But if you want to accomplish something, if you want to grow, you have an opportunity to do it. You know, I mean, you're going to still find different injustices around the country, but I don't think East Cleveland is failing due to social injustice. I think it's an internal thing. You know, there are people that probably could help our city, but right now they see an opportunity for property values to go down, and property values probably is low now than they'll ever get. So now it's prime spot for people to start buying up property because they can get it for a little bit of nothing now, you know.
But doesn't that seem wrong to you?
It depends. No, it doesn't seem wrong. I mean, the people didn't have to let this happen. You know, I take care of my property. I still live in East Cleveland. I take care of it, and you know, and anybody else can do the same thing. And if more people did the same thing, you know, we wouldn't be in this shape. Take care of your property. You know, I mean, I look out my door and see people with their garbage cans in the front yard turned over, and they leave it there all week. You know, that's got nothing to do with social justice. You know, I see people playing music till like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, loud music. That's got nothing to do with social justice. You know, that's an individual that just don't care about their surroundings. You know, they don't care about that little old lady that lives next door, you know, or that couple that has to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go to work. You know, I mean, these are individual things. I don't look at those as social injustice. I don't look at things that's happening in East Cleveland as social injustice. You know, I look at these are individual things that people need to put themselves in check and quit blaming it on the government and the city or whatever. People need to put themselves in check.
All right. So, can you explain what you learned, if anything, about social justice through working on this project?
I have learned that people use the term social injustice, and I don't think they're looking at the big picture. I just don't feel like they're looking at the big picture. You know, I think people look at their own problems and issues and not taking responsibility for their contribution to them. You know, but people tend to blame. I mean, that's a good out to blame it on social injustice. You know, that's a good way out. You know, it's safe. You know, but I see certain things every day, so I don't feel that.
I mean, but we can agree that, like, police brutality is a social injustice, right?
That's definitely a social injustice.
And people can't really do anything about, I mean, like, on a personal, individual level, like, young black men can't do anything about police brutality except kind of submit entirely to the police anytime they're stopped. And so when they're profiled or when they're subjected to excessive force, like, that's not somebody blaming their problems on
Okay,
the
now
bigger picture.
now that you bring that up, I do remember a time when I thought it was social injustice on myself. At the time, I was living up in Corning, New York, and this one police officer, I was one of few black people in the community, and so I kind of stood out. And this one police officer, when I first moved up there, this one police officer stopped me one time and said that the building I was staying in, they were selling drugs out of it. and he wanted me. At first, he tried to say that I was a part of it, you know, and I wasn't at that time. I wasn't, and he asked me to help him, and I told him I would not help him do his job. You need to do your job yourself. What happened is we got off on the wrong foot. So every time he would see me driving down the street or anything, he would harass me. Now, well, that's probably because I was black. To the point whereas he would stop me and he gave me a ticket for driving with abilities impaired. And he gave me that ticket because he couldn't give me a drunk driving ticket. He stopped me, gave me breathalyzer. I had been drinking. I was .07. The law is .08. He could not say I was drunk driving, but he had to do something, so he gave me a ticket for driving with abilities impaired. He stopped me a second time for the same thing. I still blew .07 because I do drink, but I do know my limit. If I'm out somewhere, I might have 2 beers at the most, you know, so I'm under that limit all the time. And both times, you know, and I got kind of upset and wouldn't pay the tickets. They took my driver's license away. And that was back in 08. I still can't, now I'm in Ohio, I can't get driver's license because of that. Now since I've been back here, I've paid over $3,000 to New York State to straighten that all out. And now they still won't, after I done paid all their fines and everything, they still won't give me my license back. And I never blew .08. You know, now I've been penalized for all these years without having any driver's license because I blew .07. Now there's an injustice in that, I would say, and I think that would be race related. Mm-hmm. You know, I would say it was race related, but it's affecting me so bad now. You know, and this is years later, and $3,000 later, and now they're telling me I can't get my license until I jump through some other hoops, go to this class where I have to go to, say I'm an alcoholic and all of that. You know, I never blew .08, so why would I go to that class? I'm not gonna do it. You know, I've already been stopped for driving without license, and that's costing me more money. So I'm gonna have to figure out, I might end up having to go to these classes anyway, you know, because I need to have my driver's license. But because of that particular injustice, you know, I'm driving around here with no driver's license. And it can affect me at any time, you know. So, yeah, I do see some injustice. But as far as the city of East Cleveland is concerned, I feel like a lot of times people tend to overstate the social injustice that they have. That's for East Cleveland. Mm-hmm. That's just my opinion. Okay. But like I said, I do understand that was criminal injustice. No, that's not criminal injustice. That's social injustice right there. Yeah.
I mean, like the 137 shots, the fact that ended up at the middle school, like, yeah. That's social injustice, and the fact that it was 2 black people driving the car. Yeah,
that's another example. Yeah.
And like that ended up in East Cleveland, and all of the reporting that happened in it said that it was an East Cleveland police shooting. Yeah,
but East Cleveland police had nothing to do with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's not something that people in East Cleveland could just be like, no, we take responsibility for this and we'll fix it ourselves.
No, I ain't talking about that part. I'm talking about things like why you don't have a grocery store out here. You know, grocery stores and things like that is not going to move into a city where stores keep getting robbed and stuff like that. They're going to stay away. If good quality businesses are going to stay away from East Cleveland until there's a change in attitude, you know. And right now the attitude is not good. It seems to be getting better, very, very slowly, you know, but the attitude is not good in East Cleveland. You know, there are some things that we can change ourselves. We can't blame it. I mean, we can't, social justice or the city administrators, none of that can help until you change your attitude about how you feel and what you want to accomplish in your city. You know, I want to be able to get up and walk my dog without having to worry about being robbed or somebody confronting me about some drugs or something like that. I want to be able to get up and maybe jog like I used to. About 25 years ago, my wife and I used to get up every morning and jog all around the neighborhood. It got to the point where we couldn't do that anymore, you know. And I just can't blame these things on social justice or injustice, you know. I've seen the change.
Do you think this kind of project, the Voicing in Action project, is impactful or useful for social justice work?
Very impactful. I think it's impactful because it gives the people a voice. It gives them a chance to talk about what's wrong in their community. This is a great opportunity to empower people, you know, because when you start talking about social justice, you know, you start thinking about what do we need to help us and how can we get help. It starts a conversation. So I think this is extremely important. We need this conversation. And you know, you got to remember that I'm just telling you how I feel about certain things, but there's a lot of people that don't agree with my way of thinking. You know, and that's fine too. But all I can do is speak for myself.
So do you feel more empowered?
Yes, by talking about what I have to say and listening to what other people have to say. That's power right there. You know, having an opportunity to listen and to communicate. And by it being done by Case Western Reserve Social Justice Institute, that in itself has an impact. This is a world-renowned university. You know, if you say Case Western Reserve Social Justice Institute, that's going to have an impact. Just the fact that Case sees that there's an opportunity here to let people speak out.
So do you feel like your feeling empowered is actually translating into your everyday activities? Like, are there things that you're doing differently because you feel empowered?
No, I don't see I'm doing anything any different. Yeah, I feel empowered because I have an opportunity to do this. That's, you know, and just the fact that there's a possibility that it might be a documentary involved in it, or, you know, a book can be wrote about it. You know, all of that gives you power, you know, to communicate what's going on in our city and how the people feel about it. You know, to document this kind of information from everyday people and put it in some kind of format and get it out there, that's power. And just the fact that it's being done here increases the power.
So, since we've started the project, you began a program for youth?
Yes, yes.
Has project in any way shape your interaction or your decision to begin that project with young people? You can say no, but
Well, I just want to make sure I understand. Did the Voice in the Action Project?
like working with the Voicing in Action project, did that give you a different perspective on how to go about obtaining funds? Did it give you ideas about how to leverage resources that were already in the community? Or was it something that you had been planning on for a long time that wasn't necessarily impacted?
It was not impacted by Voice in Action Project, but I noticed that as I was moving forward with it, I was meeting like-minded people that could help me with the project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So maybe networking?
Networking, I think that had a lot of impact.
Okay. So what impact do you think the Voicing in Action project has had on the people who have been interviewed in the community?
Well, it gives a person an opportunity to express themselves, and anytime you let a person just talk about how they feel, that gives them an opportunity to feel good or bad about what's going on in their environment. The people that's impacted, well, a good thing that they can derive from it is the fact that this information is going to be archived at Case Western Reserve. So their great-grandparent kids can probably look it up if they want to find out about them. You know, just the fact that these people we got a chance to document our feelings, yeah, and they're going to be archived right here at Case Western Reserve. I think that's a good thing. You know, like I said, my great-grandparents can look it up, come down here and get the film and find out how I felt. You know.
So what about the community dialogues? I know you went to a couple of those. Do you feel like that was useful for the community?
Yes, they were a big part for the interviewees because that gave them a chance to see some of the filming that they had done and find out how it impacted this project, and give them a chance to ask questions and and get some knowledge about how the project is progressing. Yeah, it gives everybody a good opportunity to come together.
So how important do you think it was for people to see in the community dialogues that maybe what they think about the city is what other people think about the city? Like positive and negative, because we've had, we showed kind of representative parts of the interviews where people said positive things about the city,
Yeah.
or people shared visions about the city, or people had struggles with the city, or people had struggles with racism and inequality. Like how important do you think it was for people to see other people say things that maybe they felt and hadn't said themselves?
What I've noticed during my interviews, a lot of people felt the same way. A lot of the people that live in this city, has lived in this city for a long time, they remember good times in the city. They remember how great the city used to be, and they want to see a resurgence of it. You know, that's why a lot of them are still here. A lot of us are still here. You know, we want to see the change because we know how it was, and it can even be better than it was. You know, myself, I'm not going anywhere. This is gonna be my home. And I find out with a lot of the people that I interviewed, a lot of people has moved out of the city, even though they didn't want to. But because of the city services being cut back so much, they felt like they didn't have a choice. You know, I don't know if I answered your question.
That's okay.
Was I headed in the right direction?
Well, I think that for me, one of the most powerful things, and I've seen all of the interviews, whereas like, as community researchers, y'all have seen the interviews that you did, and
Right.
then kind of the interviews that we've showed clips from in meetings at community dialogues. And so for me, it's really powerful to see that a lot of people feel the same way about things. And so I was just wondering if you thought that was impactful for community when everybody came together and was in the same room and saw people saying things that maybe they felt but hadn't discussed in public.
Well, I thought that people, in most cases, most people felt the same way about how the city is and how it treated them. You know.
Did they feel alone in that though?
No.
No, they always knew that it was like that for everybody else.
Most people that I talk to, they realize that they're not alone. But like I said, I spoke mostly with older, mature people that have been around. A lot of them have been around 50 years, you know, in the city, and they saw all these changes, you know. So, yeah, I think the impact that they had is mostly the same. Yeah.
Okay. How would you change or improve the project?
How would I change it? I don't see much that I would want to change because I think that we went in a pretty good direction. One thing that I think would probably help future researchers, you know, I mean, the monetary thing is not, to a lot of us, that's not an important thing, but it does help, you know. So when you say, we're going to give you this to do that, I think it's important that you do that, you know. And sometimes, one thing that I was concerned about, you know, certain films, certain interviews that you would do, and then there might be something in the interview, like this one, because there was a little bit of glare coming from this mirror. At that point, you don't get paid for it because it had a glare in the mirror. But, you know, when you think about all that's involved and taking that interview, setting up coordinating the time for everybody, traveling, getting a camera, setting it up, going for a couple of hours to do an interview, and then say, well, it's got a glare, so you don't get your $15 or $25, whatever it was, for this, you know. That might bother some people, you know, and because, see, although you did all this work to get to that point, there's something in that interview that can be used some kind of way, you know, and when you think that all that a person had to do to get to that point, to go through it and get that interview, you know, I think they should be compensated for whatever they do, because I don't think nobody's just going to make a piece of garbage that you just can't use nothing out of, you know. If you're going to compensate somebody for their efforts, do that. You know, because some people might get offended. You know, that $15 or $25 might be extremely important for one person, where it's not so important for another. You know, but I think that's something that should be considered in the future.
So do you feel like quicker feedback would help with that, or do you feel like being more clear about the expectations would help with that?
That would help with it.
Okay, so clear expectations.
And you know, and like I said, no matter what it is that you might have done wrong in there, you can still find some kind of use out of 2 hours of interviewing. You know, it's got to be something in there you can use. You know, but don't discard the interviewer's efforts. You know, the interviewer puts in a lot of efforts, coordinate time, driving here and there, setting up a place, doing the interview. There's a lot involved in that process, you know.
So did you feel like the times that you didn't get the stipend, did you feel like your efforts were just discounted entirely?
When I didn't get the stipends yeah, right, that's how I felt, you know. But it wasn't, I mean, it didn't disturb me enough to not want to finish the project. But some people it might. And you have to really be concerned about that because that stipend is going to be important to some people. You know, I was fortunate enough to, you know, get by it, but I did think about it. As you can see. Yeah. But that little bit of stipend might make all the difference in the world to gas for your car, whatever it is you might need, you know. And like I said, 2 hours of your time, coordinating all of that, that's what you get stipend for, I thought, was all of your efforts. Yeah. But that's just my opinion. That's what I got.
Yeah. No, I'm glad to hear that. I think that will help us talk to people up front, like what the expectations
Right.
are, and, you know, I think that, you know, the stipend is a way for us to honor people's efforts.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, when you introduce money into a relationship, it makes things a little different.
Right.
So I think that gives us something to think about going forward, like, because $25 isn't adequate compensation for you to actually do all of those things. It's supposed to be a demonstration that, you know, we appreciate your
efforts.
your
Yeah.
efforts,
Right.
you know. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up,
Mm-hmm.
and it will be something for us to think about. I might
Okay.
come back to you and talk to you about it later, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Are there any other ways you would change the project or improve it?
Improve or change? Yes, I would get a central location for interviews because sometimes you run into a problem where you have a hard time getting a location. But if you have a place set up here that you can come to as your last resort, if it has to be, you know, and we have that now. We didn't have that at first, but it's very important to have a central location in case you can't get a place to set up at. Also, let me see, what else could it be to improve the project? I did have something else in mind. Let me think about it. Okay. God. I had something else in mind. I can't think of it now.
Well, I think while you think about it, you know, part of this project we're talking about it ongoing kind of thing. How useful would it be for you as a new person?
Mm-hmm.
Would it have been to have somebody like you now that you've had all this experience?
It would be a big help to have somebody, like, say if they had started it in Cleveland Heights and then I started the project in East Cleveland, but I had somebody over there that could give me pointers, you know, because they had been through it all. That would be a great help, you know, to call on them and maybe even periodically have them come to our meetings and talk about things because they understand some of the issues better because they've been through it. Yeah. Yeah. And I would definitely be willing to, wherever the project goes from here, if it goes to another community, I would definitely be interested in helping from my experience or finding out how my experience can help. but you can count on me.
So the change and improve question is the last one I have. So do you want to take a little while longer to think about it? You know, did it have to do with training, or did it have to do with meeting times, or the questions we asked? I mean, you can always send me an email and I can add it as like a...
I did have something I wanted to say about that I thought would help, and now I can't. I'm drawing a blank on it. I started talking about something else and just I hate when that happens. It'll come to me when I get back home.
Sure. Well, feel free to send me an email. Is there anything that you wanted to add?
Just the fact that I thought this was a great experience. I'm glad that I was part of it. You know, was glad that I had such a well-informed staff that I could rely on. It's just a good project that I want to thank Dr. Ronda for letting me be a part of.
Thank you.
All righty.